Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome, everyone, to Mixed Bag Panel number 7. Number 7 already. I'm pretty excited to keep this going. We have some panelists tonight. Again, if you have questions for the panelists, you want to support the show, please super chat. I pinned the link in the chat. If you guys want to redirect the conversation, super chat is a great way to do that. And without further ado, I'll bring up some of the guests tonight. We'll start with Mr. Andrew Wilson.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. Yeah, you still need to tell people who you are. I know you think everyone knows who you are already, but some people actually don't know who you are.
No, they all know who I am.
Okay,
no,
they do.
My name is Andrew Wilson, host of The Crucible. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Also, your mic is too fucking loud again, Jimbob.
Gotcha. All right, here we go. I just got to stay away from it.
That's right.
How's that?
Yeah, better.
All right,
more
good.
better.
All right, cool.
More better.
All right, cool. And did you already say your channel?
Hang on. Yeah, my channel is The Crucible.
Gotcha. Mr. Sonsel, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm Sonsel. I like to play video games and argue with people on the internet. I've been a little bit away from the space for a while because I'm actually touching grass, but nice to actually talk to people on stream for the first time in a while.
Welcome. And you have a channel? Is it just Sonsel or?
Yeah, SONDSOL.
All right, cool. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming up. Jake?
Yes, sir. I'm Jake, Rattlesnake TV. I have been on the Crucible. I've been on the Crucible before. Is that where we did the debate last time?
It is.
Yep. But yeah, first time here. I didn't think I was going to get invited. I was getting a little bit self-conscious, to be honest, Jimbob. Didn't think you were going to invite me, but happy to be here.
Oh, why is that? I mean, that was like a bar conversation we had. People were upset. They wanted us yelling at each other, and it just didn't happen.
I wouldn't have invited you, Jake, if it makes you feel better.
That makes me feel a lot better. Thanks, man.
Right.
I appreciate that.
I got your back, Jake.
Yeah, so as you guys know, the style is just pretty open. We can start with anything. Jake, before you were talking about, there's this clip going around. I actually can't find it right now, but you may have seen it. It's just a bunch of like chicks, younger girls dancing, and they're crunking and doing all nothing we haven't seen in a basic environment of college. But what is happening with that? There's something different happening, right? What do you think is? Are they just making it into something, or is it something?
I think it's something. I think it's innocuous in itself, the actual act of young girls dancing because young girls are going to dance. I don't think that's the major problem. But when I see things like this, and I'm interested to know what you guys think about it, I think it begs a deeper question, like a societal question. And that question is, well, what is the sort of ethics that are meant to guide our society? And why do people have this repulsion when they see this sort of thing? And I think part of it is the fact that young girls 20, 21, 22. They're meant to be these sort of vessels of purity and joy and happiness. And to see them like that, thrusting their hips and doing all of this degenerate behavior, I think that there's this repulsion that people get because people recognize when they see that is antithetical to how a Christian American culture should be. And they kind of all look like Midwestern little cowgirls with their boots on. And yeah, I think that there's a deeper cultural question there to be asked.
Right. So, Sanzel, are we just all like the new boomers who are like, the squares and they're like, these damn hippie chicks, whores? Is that what you hear from your side? It's just like,
well,
what are you guys talking
it
about?
totally depends on what these girls are doing. I have no idea what clip you're talking about.
I'm going to try to find it.
Yeah.
It's actually very, like Jake said, fairly innocuous considering what else is on the internet, right? But yeah, I guess they're just making it sort of the embodiment of the current culture, which I think we all argue at different times is just the remnant of an egalitarian fucking fart, enlightenment fart, I call it. And I think people are just going, what are we supposed to be doing right now? It's like this liberation thing that we keep doing. It's not just peculiar to women. And I think that's what we're really pointing to. So just imagine a bunch of chicks dancing and crunking, and they're like, I'm free, basically. That's what they're saying with their face and their eyes. And we're wondering, this isn't really telling us where to go. And I think everyone's starting to ask, where do we go and who can provide the ethical system to point in the direction?
For me, I think that there are a lot of things right now that even for my libcuck brain, I look at it and I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. There's no way, like there's been all the drama with Vosh and the Lolicon stuff. There's constant dramas with
Lolicon Queen.
Yeah.
You've seen the music video for that, right?
I'm gonna pass on seeing that one.
Okay.
But, I think that there is a lot of stuff that people should either keep private or there should be social pressure to keep them from talking about that shit publicly because it is fucking weird, especially like the Lolicon stuff.
What is this? I have no idea.
It's like
you don't want to know, man.
Yeah? It's just based. Okay. You can look it up after, anime? But it's pretty gross.
No, there's this fat, ugly communist named Vosh. Mm-hmm. And he got caught.
Is that the thermodynamics one that I posted?
Yeah, that's thermodynamics guy. Yep. And he got caught with Loli on his computer. So he's been making the big leftist apology tour, where he kind of takes responsibility, but at the same time says, no, not really. I think that this is fine. Basically, that's basically what's going on.
Yeah.
And Sansa, you're saying there's nothing that's shocking we're getting to a point where it's some thresholds are not shocking people anymore. And our side of things, the square traditionalists are clutching our pearls, right? And going, let's maybe reintroduce some barriers here. And you're agreeing that where is this line is a good question, right?
I think that for me, I think there's a little bit of both, because I think that on the internet we have this culture where we overshare like a motherfucker, and we think that basically, they had the whole don't kink shame thing going on for a while. But there's also a quote, I think that it was Socrates or someone in that same time period, and it basically boils down to children these days don't respect their elders. They're constantly drinking and being bad influences on society, yada yada yada. I think that there is just something in the human condition where we look at our past and we think that that's the way that things ought to always be, or we look at our past and we think it was significantly different than it is now, right? Because
remember that Socrates was living in a democracy, though, Sansel.
I don't think that has literally anything to do with what I'm talking about right now.
I think it does, Sansel.
I don't think so at all. But
I think so.
What I'm trying to get at is people have like recency bias, and they always remember the best parts of their younger years, and they always kind of implant that onto the current day. When there really isn't that much of a difference, all things considered. Yeah, so I guess like for this specific video, I think that I would have to see it, but there are some things that I would say are a little cringe.
I would push back a little. I mean, just came out, 2 weeks ago. There was a couple of dudes banging each other on the top of a train in public, and I'm wondering if the boomer who goes back in our day, like if maybe they do.
Back in our day,
I'm pretty sure public sex is always
sex inside of the Capitol building.
That
like
okay? They just didn't have the video cameras.
Right? No. Well, that's our point. Is that if we want to push and pressure degeneracy back into the dark corners where it belongs, if it were to happen, we would still say don't do that, but there's something about this crossover that the internet seems to inform the general public that, well, it's already in the public in that sense. So what's the big change between seeing some clip of this happening on the general internet and someone doing it on the train? I think this is a problem. Like, the public space is now both physical and digital, and that seems to be a distinction.
Are you saying that like seeing two guys fuck on a train in person is going to be significantly or like exactly the same as seeing it on the internet?
No, I'm saying seeing it on the internet, I'm saying might lead someone to believe, well, there's no real distinction between the internet and the physical reality. And if they accept it in one space, maybe it is accepted. Maybe we should give it a shot. And it seems in some of these European nations, they're getting a little more liberal about, walking people on leashes, and you're like, dude, this is degenerate. And they're like, well, I picked up his shit, so what's the problem? And it's like, well, we're talking about a fundamentally different paradigm. So there might, I agree with you that we look back and we have a bias, McDonald's and Burger King were once better, right? And we go, oh, remember when we had to blow in the game, and we really appreciated when it worked in the Nintendo. But this seems to be different. We're actually talking about degradation, not just change. And I would think, is there a distinction, Sanzel, from your view, between degrading or just changing? Because you're arguing, well, it's just changing, and so everyone thinks their time was better. But I'm talking about, no, there might be actually, I believe that there's fundamentally degradation. There is demoralization. It's getting degenerate. Specific, not just change, degenerate.
I think that especially in the area of the internet that we inhabit, we definitely see that a lot more, especially with the kinds of audiences that are interested in this kind of content. You're going to see people blow this sort of shit up way more. It's really hard for me to parse whether something is actually a huge societal problem and whether something is relegated to this side of the internet, especially the more that I go out and I actually touch grass, I talk to more people, I start moving into like a more career oriented thing, more rather than like an hourly wage job type thing. I start to see like most of the people in the real world don't fucking know about any of this shit. They don't know about, they don't know what lolicon is. Half of them don't watch fucking anime. They don't care about anything that happens on the internet. But when it comes to the culture that is in this area of the internet, I do think, and this is something I've been moving on a little bit, the unbelievable amount of like coomerism and the unbelievable fucking shit that people will put themselves into to see some titty is unfucking real, right? Like, I just want to like grab people and shake them and say like, go to a fucking coffee shop, talk to a girl in real life, right? And I feel like if people were able to have more real life connections and real life relationships, not just, like romantic relationships, but, friendships, whatever, I feel like a lot of this would kind of naturally go away on its own, because when you're in these areas of the internet, right, and that kind of behavior is reinforced by other coomers constantly trying to get the e-girl to post titty, you think that it's completely normal.
Well, I think I would kind of take the opposite stance in terms of the fact. I think if I am correct, you're saying that if we stop talking about this stuff, the degeneracy would kind of go away because people would stop focusing on it.
No. I think that the internet in the real world, while it is at the most like integrated that
Use
it's
your
ever
words,
been up to this
Sonsel.
point.
Use
That's
your
what
words.
I'm saying. I'm using them right now, Andrew. The real world and the internet is the most integrated that it's ever been up to this point. But I don't think it's as integrated as we think it is as content creators or viewers in this space. Is
Right.
basically
You're saying it's
the thrust of it.
overrepresented. You're saying it's overrepresented, like most things, because
To
of the
our
internet.
attention, yeah.
Right. Well, I want to go back to Andrew's point.
Yeah.
Andrew, go ahead, and because I want to bring that back. It was kind of just like looked at for a second. Our system itself, like what is our system fundamentally based on? If you said, well, they had democracy then, now, it is valid to question the system, which all societal happenings happen upon, right? If it's liberalism, if it's egalitarianism, if it's some enlightenment approach to just liberty itself, I think Andrew might has a point here that, if that's the goal.
Hang on, before we get into that though, if you don't mind, Jimbob, I would like to point out that I did tell Sonsel years ago that he's going to get married, he's going to settle down, and he's going to turn into a staunch right-wing lunatic conservative who says all of the time, everywhere that he goes, I can't believe all these fucking coomers and these degen scumbag motherfuckers, right? That is Sonsel's fate. He doesn't know it yet, but that is Sonsel's fate.
Hey,
I did tell you
listen,
that,
I'm
Sonsel.
already-
You
I'm
can
already
confirm,
there.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
I was a lot
and
more
look,
liberal with my takes on sex and people's viewing of shit about a year ago, but just the man, I don't even know how to verbalize how fucking weird it is seeing how these people operate. Like,
well,
that's
because you're off in the real world again, right? And you remember how the real world works now, which is that most people aren't fucking crazy lunatic coomers, right? Most of them aren't. And so all Sonsel's really saying, I think this is what you're getting at. I'll try to paraphrase it because you're half retarded, and I'll try to make your point a little bit better for you. So all he's saying is, in the real world, people aren't a bunch of degenerate coomers, generally speaking. And so, they get up, they go to work every day, this and that. So he's saying if you have more aligned interest towards that, that's who you're going to attract. You're going to have those types of friends. You're going to have those types of people who have families, this kind of thing. They're not going to be perpetually online, literally selling their souls so that they can watch some 3-titted chick or some chick with 2 vaginas. That's basically what he's saying.
Right. Okay.
In so many words, I think that like most of that is getting to the thrust of what I'm trying to say. Sure.
So are you now flirting toward that? Maybe there is something about decency laws and maybe even blasphemy laws.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No.
What?
That is something I'm not in favor of. I think social pressure.
How do you battle it then?
I think social pressure is something that should come back on this sort of stuff. Like, if you're jerking it to fucking Tony the Tiger porn on the internet, and then you're going around and bragging about that, I think people should shame the fuck out of you.
Isn't a law a social pressure?
No,
it's not. Are you sure about that? How is a law and the threat of punishment not a social pressure?
Social pressure would just be like the threat of like being ostracized possibly from like a social group or like a friend group for doing something really fucking weird or really fucking bad.
Right? Yeah, I call that jail.
Well, I mean, that would be one way to pressure someone away from doing something. However, I'm an American. And I believe in the First Amendment. And I think that freedom of speech is a really cool thing, personally.
I mean, not really. It's like, it's okay. Like, it's okay, right? It's not great, though, Sonsel. It's okay.
I think it's really great.
What's so great about it?
What's so great about it? I think that you can say the things that you want to say without being thrown in prison.
Yeah, but I mean, not really. They just like if you have wrongthink, though, they can basically do the next best thing, which is just cancel all your credit cards and cancel all your bank accounts.
Should there be a line though, Andrew? Should there be a line where we say that people are allowed to say a certain thing? Because surely we don't want to be like China, for example, where they've got a social credit system where you can not get a bus if you criticize the government too much on Facebook.
We're pretty close, though.
Well, the thing is I mean, you're right. Okay, the First Amendment is one of the few, a person being able to have some kind of right to express themselves, that even if it is just a social conception, I think it's pretty useful as one. The thing is, though, is it's not really applied. And so, like most rights, I don't really give a shit about it because the truth is that it all moves over into private power anyway. And under private institutions, they don't give a shit. They don't care what your conception is of your rights. They don't give a shit. They just will throw you off the platform. They'll seize your finances. They'll do all that shit. So I'm not sure. I'm not really sure where the First Amendment line should be drawn because I'm not really sure that it's applied to anybody anyway. Well, the second the public space moved from the town square into these digital spaces, it doesn't seem like the First Amendment even exists anymore to me.
Yeah, I would say though, in terms of like I spent some time in Thailand last year, for example, and they've got one law where if you criticize the king, you get 10 years in jail or something like that. And
I bet nobody criticizes the king.
Well, they do, and they get imprisoned for it. And that's a big problem.
Well, that sounds stupid. I wouldn't criticize the king if I was going to get 10 years in prison. That sounds dumb.
But the premise shouldn't be there in the first place.
Why not?
That in that culture, if you criticize the king, you get 10 years in prison. Well, because then the king becomes uncriticizable, and he's not God. He's a human being who's fallible.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Should people be able to criticize God?
No, but God's God, though. That's blasphemy.
Oh, yeah, right. That's
God's perfect.
Wait a second here. Hang on a second. So we're going to make the delineation here that we can't criticize God. What about atheists who don't believe in God?
Well, I mean, it's blasphemy if you criticize God. I don't think you should be able to. I mean,
which one?
You can if you want to.
Is it British?
But I think that it's immoral.
Criticize Krishna?
No, because he's not real. It's bullshit.
Can we criticize? This is where our conundrum comes in, right? It's like if a person thinks that Satan is God, can I criticize that person's God? I think I had better be able to.
Well, it depends what the ethics of the culture are. If you live in a Christian culture and then you worship a Christian God, then it should be immoral to criticize that Christian God. But if you live in a Christian culture,
I mean, what about lawful?
Krishna is bullshit, then that should be fine.
Yeah, but I would already think that it's immoral to criticize God, but that doesn't really push a question. Yeah, but that doesn't really push the question of whether or not it should be legal to criticize God. And this is the question, right? So you're kind of saying in this point, look, if we have a king, I want to be able to criticize that son of a bitch, right? But don't you dare criticize God or you're going to jail, right? So the question is it really me who's having a problem here with the threshold of the line, or Jake, is it you who's having a problem with the threshold?
Well, I wouldn't say that you should go to jail for it. I think you should be able to. For example, if I had kids, they wouldn't be able to criticize God. Well, they would be able to, but you're not able to in my household, or else there'll be punishments of some sort. And I think that there should be some sort of social punishment when somebody criticizes God. It shouldn't be something that we can do flippantly.
Well, if you're a king, the whole kingdom's your house, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But then it's how does the king enforce his rules in that house, though? That's the question.
He calls 1-800-HINCH. What do you mean? How else would you do it? You call 1-800-HINCH. The thugs show up with the clubs. They beat the holy shit out of you and straight to jail, right?
Yeah, but I think that's not the correct way to do it, though. And I think that we should both be able to recognize that God is God and then man is fallible. So it's God over man. And then man is inherently fallible. So if you have a leader who rules with an iron fist, then if they're making like dreadful mistakes and if they're not guided by the right ethics, then that could be absolutely detrimental to a culture if they have unmitigated power.
Are there a lot of people in Thailand, Jake, who like this law?
There are a lot of people who have pictures of the king on their bedside table and in their restaurants. And I think that they would say that they like the law, but I think that they would be pretty scared of the law.
Yeah, no, right. I get that. And
actually, last year, there was an election in Thailand where they elected a slightly more liberal government who wants to get rid of it. So I'm not sure if it even still exists.
Who wants to get rid of the criticize the king law?
Yeah.
I'm sure the king didn't like that, though, right?
I wouldn't imagine he did.
Yeah, he probably wasn't a big fan. But the thing is like, here's the question. The question is coming down. A law like that for somebody who's in charge like that is probably to control slander, right? You have national upheavals, things like this. It's very easy to take a prominent political figure, slander the shit out of them, destroy their reputation, anything that you can do. it makes sense to me that a monarch would have such a law in the books. Hey, if you're trying to slander me, right, with your untruths, you know, your ass goes to jail. You say, wait a second, doesn't seem very fair. That doesn't seem correct. Like, what if you are a crazy fucking lunatic, right? What if you're some kind of Looney Tune? Well, here's the line, right? The line is, it's their shit, right? And who are you to make the determination if they're a Looney Tune or not? Maybe you're the fucking Looney Tune. You're trying to have a Marxist revolution like they did once. You know what I mean? So the question to me is, I'm not sure that you shouldn't have a law necessarily saying you can't criticize the king. I'm not convinced on that. I remain unconvinced.
Yeah. Well, the question of whether or not blasphemy laws or something else would be inevitable seems to be unanimous that they are inevitable. And so the only question is who's informing the king or the household. So Jake, your household, like Andrew said, the kingdom is the king's household. The question is only who's informing the blasphemy laws, not whether or not they'll exist. It seems that they're inevitable. Even if you say scrap it all and you get anarchy, that's just the starting ground for the house building again. And so I don't think we can get away from blasphemy laws or these kinds of things. The only question to me is, what's the best, most coherent system to inform these things? And obviously Christian
blasphemy laws are inevitable.
Yeah.
Where didn't we used to have blasphemy laws?
Yeah, you changed the standard.
They're pretty awesome.
So if we had blasphemy laws and then we got rid of them, how does that mean that they're inevitable?
It's
well,
a vacuum.
The same way. Remember how we had alcohol once and then we got rid of it, and then it came back.
I don't think that was inevitable.
Wasn't it inevitable?
I don't know if you can logically pull that train across.
I think the question is, like, let's say an anarch. It's similar in my view that if an anarchist says, "Let's get rid of the government," I'm arguing in the same way that what you call a government, a group of even men deciding what to do on the land once the government's gone, is a vacuum, and someone's going to stand in and make a new rule. So the same way man makes new laws, they will make new code for blasphemy, and how to enforce it might change, might vary, but that element, whatever is built, is going to have some sort of standard of ethics and norms that it's going to be expected and it's going to be enforced. And in this case, blasphemy laws still exist. It's just that we've given the code over to a bunch of subjectivists and leftists who have an ever-changing ethical paradigm, right? Of just, arbitrary, you're not making me feel good. So it's like, why would we let them run with it? If it's seemingly inevitable, we should just take it back as Christians and apply our own ethics and blasphemy laws if they're going to exist anyway.
Because I feel like if I'm not wrong here, because I haven't done any research into blasphemy laws because it's just never been a topic that I've cared about, but isn't that just unconstitutional in the United States? Hasn't that been? Haven't there been rulings?
Yeah, Constitution sucks.
Oh man, I didn't realize there were so many anti-American fucking people on this podcast. I thought I was talking to fucking conservatives.
Yeah,
what happened to the fucking freedom-loving, fucking eagle, fucking shirt-wearing, American flag in the background?
Sanzel, you're just entering.
We found out when we gave you guys freedom, all you did is go and have gay sex with it. So.
On a train.
That's all you did. So we were like, wait a second. Okay, hang on. We're rethinking this whole thing. We're rethinking this whole Coomer freedom bullshit here.
The rights. Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Fewer Christians as time goes on, and there are more and more people. So it feels like the idea that it's inevitable that we're going to make Christian blasphemy laws anytime soon. Or that
he's well, hang on. When he's talking about blasphemy laws, think about like hate speech laws. Those would be considered basically a form of blasphemy. Laws.
Yeah, I think those are bullshit too.
Yeah. But all it is like, this is a thing which we hold to be near and dear in society, and any type of language which exists against it. And we've had these types of laws forever, like the N-word, for instance. If you run around in public saying that, it's probably going to be some severe repercussions. I'm sure that there's some ordinances which are localized somewhere where that would be considered disturbing the peace, or something of this nature. So that's what he means when he's talking about blasphemy laws, is a thing which is held sacred or near and dear to some subset of society, where if it's defamed or in some way spoken against, there's severe repercussions for that. That's what that really is alluding to.
Right. And someone's going to take the reins. Someone's going to take the reins every time.
Yeah, but just like the idea, and like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Christians are coming back in a big way, but like based off of everything that I know, I feel like there are fewer and fewer people every year that, self-describe as religious or very religious, and there are fewer and fewer people every year that go to church. There are fewer
and they don't breed.
People.
Yeah, they're not breeding. So,
yeah, that's right. They don't breed. Yeah. So what's the consequence? What's the consequence of
smaller and smaller percentage of you guys out there?
Yeah, and a smaller and smaller percentage of those people who breed leads to what being left over. If X doesn't breed and other X does breed, Sansa, what do we end up with?
Okay, wait. Square this circle for me, all right?
You don't square circles, Sansa.
I know that it's a fucking joke saying, Andrew. All right, light up a fucking fifth cigarette. All right,
it's my sixth, you piece of shit.
Gotcha. Nice to know that you're keeping count too.
That's right.
So
they're my lungs, Sansa. They're my lungs, and you're blaspheming them right now. Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't say anything about black people or black lungs. All right, so we have more and more people. The percentage of religious people is shrinking every year. How does that square with the idea that eventually, right, that the Christians are going to outbreed everyone else? Is it just going to happen like the year 2500?
Well, let's make the assumption that atheists have one kid, okay, and that the religious have three generally, right? This is not the case, but it for the purpose of demonstration, it's fine.
I understand.
Okay. Now, if the religious are having three for every one that atheists have, even if you peel off every fourth or fifth child from the religious, and the religious are more likely to follow their parents' religion, you would agree that that's true. There's no doubt that that's true. That's why people are born in Christian nations are more likely to be Christian. People born in Muslim nations more likely to be Muslim. Then over time, gradually, you'll see the whittle down of the one ideology versus the other, right? There's really no way around that.
How was there an increase in atheism or agnosticism in the United States when, 30, 40 years ago, we were an overwhelmingly majority Christian nation?
Well, overwhelmingly majority, you have 90 to 95% who self-identified as being Christian. But those who were in depth and practiced their religion, that was a completely different story. Right now, you see people falling away from Protestant churches, and they're moving more towards what you would consider extreme versions of the church, more traditional. So, say Catholicism, Orthodoxy, or even more base Protestant churches. Now, the ones who aren't, that's true. They move more towards agnosticism and atheism, but their reproduction rates drastically decrease when they do. Why? Because nihilism can't give you an ought for why you should breed. So, in other words, Sansa, if you can have the reproductive act without the reproduction,
I understand.
Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, because I assume that there are some women out there that think that childbirth like 5 or 6 times probably hurts a lot more. So,
well, no, that's not it. It's just that they don't have children anymore until they're till they're 30. Because what ends up happening is they go off and they do school, and then they run the cock carousel. They do.
Yeah, I understand all the red pill talking points.
No, it's not a red pill talking point. This bears out. Do you know what the average age of marriage is for women in the United States?
Fuck it. Right now, it might be like 30.
So when do you think? When do you think these women are having families? Then about 30.
Probably about 30, or maybe 35.
And do you think they're past their best childbearing years at 30?
I don't know the biological reality of all this stuff. This stuff is not interesting to me whatsoever. What I'm trying to say
are. Well, what I'm saying is that a 21-year-old is probably more fertile than a 30-year-old, right?
Probably.
So this is my point,
right? Because you're bringing up all these like, well, we have 3 kids for all these atheists, one, and eventually we're gonna outbreed them. And
no. I'm just giving you an overview of why it would be that if you had a 3-to-1 odd, and even if you peeled off every fourth, that it's inevitable that Christians will simply outbreed you. And there's no choice in that.
I don't know. Number one, if there is enough pressure within like Christian communities to do that, to breed themselves into the majority again. And on top of that, I don't know if you guys have the numbers, even if you start now, to do that by the time I'm dead. All right.
Well, the Amish double their population, right? What, every couple of years? If you
now there's 3,000 of them. What?
No. Well, this is a good case in point to 3,000 of them. This is a good
I'm
case in
making
point to show you, though, that the people who are much more religious and adhere more to the religious practice tend to have more children. There's no
I
doubt that
understand
that's
I
true.
don't disagree with that.
The same thing, hang on, the same thing happens when you have Hispanics who come up from south of the border. You would agree that they tend to have much larger families than domestic Americans. You yourself have quoted studies stating this, but the reason that they do is because their family life is based around Catholicism. That's why. It's based around Catholicism and the fact that they don't believe in birth control and this type of thing, because Catholics don't believe in that shit. So they have 9, 10, 12 fucking kids, right? Why would you assume then that if the domestic population, the atheists who are below right now replacement rate, they're below replacing themselves, Sansel, right? Mm-hmm. That Christians would not be able to bridge that gap. Of course they're going to. So over time, now this is going to take a long time. This isn't something which is instantaneous, but over the course of 70, 80, 90 years, you're going to see a drastic difference in the demographic between religious and non-religious just based on who's having kids.
I mean, you can think that if you want. I think that we're kind of moving in one direction that we've been seeing play out for like the past 100 years. It could change. It could continue to go the same. Neither of us knows whether that's going to happen or not. I would just think that we're probably going to continue on the trend that we have been, unless something really crazy happens.
Which is hang on. But I want you to think about our trend here. Okay, so this isn't crazy to you. Do you agree with that right this second, the United States is below replacement levels for its birth rate?
I'll take your word for it. I wouldn't doubt it.
Okay, yeah, it is. And it's decreasing. Would you agree that that's true as well? You can Google it if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so then this means for us to sustain our population, we would need to have immigrants come in, right?
Yes.
Those immigrants who come in are going to be much more heavily religious, likely, than the domestic population, right?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. Sorry, I got to...
Yeah, the immigrants who are coming in are probably going to be more religious than the domestic population, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if that's the case, they're more religious, they're having much more children than the domestic population. You have to rely on more and more immigrants coming in order to replace your current population, just like Japan. You're talking about a nation which has always closed its borders to other people. They're talking about, for once, bringing in immigrants because they don't have enough people to take care of their elderly. South Korea isn't even going to exist in 100 years, Sonzel. They're at less than one person. One person per two in reproduction. That's insanity. That's less than one person per woman. So populations like that, they collapse.
Yeah, I just Googled it right now. Even with all of the mass immigration that we've had from Central and South America, a decade ago, or 2007, 78% of adults in the U.S. described themselves as Christian. And in 2021, it was 63%.
And why don't you tell me what the birth rate looks like between those two time periods?
It's probably...
tell me which demographic are having the babies.
Probably Hispanic people.
Probably the religious people. That's right.
And yet the percentage is still going down while no religion is going up.
Oh, it doesn't need to. It's a self-correcting problem. Do you understand?
If there are more Hispanic people coming into the United States and they're having more children, and the percentage of people
the domestic population is not having children, even if more of the domestic population who identifies as atheist than religious but has less children, it's a self-correcting problem.
I don't know. This sounds like cope to me, but hey,
can I give one argument?
How is that cope?
Andrew,
go ahead, Jake.
So the only thing that I worry about in this regard, I see what you're saying, Andrew, and I do see the same pattern happening. But the only thing that I worry about in that regard is that if we have a largely atheist culture, for example, when the kids go to school, if they stop learning the Bible and start learning about how to be basically gay, then like what happens when the kids from these religious families are being brought into these public schools and are being indoctrinated? Yep. Do you think that like as they get older, they sort of they will filter out towards atheism, and that actually the population won't become more?
Yeah, so it does seem to be the case that atheism or secularism can be alluring and allure people out of Christianity. However, most people who grow up with a single religious doctrine tend to keep that doctrine, and that's
they come back. Truth. Yeah, they come back.
They tend to keep that doctrine, and you're starting to see trends in society now where people are homeschooling more and more, and that is on the incline. And so I would suspect that as
Christianity instead of
indoctrinating them into that fucking communism, right?
Yeah, totally. Indoctrination is another inevitable thing.
Which indoctrination center should I prefer, mine or yours, Sonzel?
I don't think that anyone should be indoctrinated.
Why not?
Well, then why are you sending them to fucking public school then?
Yeah, but why not? Why not? I don't understand that. I don't get this position.
All of your liberal progressive bullshit came from what you were trained in public school, Sonzel. Right, all of it.
Right.
Absolutely not. If anything,
really? Where did it come from then?
I'll tell you off stream. Okay?
Came from the trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Why? Yeah, but why is indoctrination wrong? Why is indoctrination wrong? I don't get this position.
I believe that we should give people the most factual,
doesn't mean fake. It doesn't mean false.
Hold on.
Indoctrination doesn't mean false.
Hold on. I think that we should give people an impartial reading of history, of science, of as close to it as possible. I understand that there's always going to be some implicit bias depending on who is writing it and what set of facts they're looking at, but we can try our best, right? I think that we should try and do that sort of stuff and then allow people to come to their own conclusions. I think that's probably the best way to go. But I mean, I'm on a panel with 3 people that think that Christianity is going to become king in the United States sometime in our lifetime. So
not in our lifetime.
We should be indoctrinating people.
No,
okay.
Nobody said that.
10 generations.
Made it up. But not only that, but Sonzel, what do you mean? Is patriotism bad?
Is patriotism? No, not necessarily.
But it's indoctrination, Sonzel.
You've been indoctrinated by the Constitution.
No,
you've been indoctrinated by. Yes, you have. You're like a boomer now. Actually, you're like my rights, my Constitution.
I know that you don't know me, but I started off as an America-hating giga commie.
Yeah, you started off as soon as you were out of public school. You started off as an American-hating giga commie.
No, when I came out of high school, I was a retard. Okay,
your mic's too loud, Jimbob.
Yours is too.
But
is mine too loud? Okay. Yeah.
But I started off as a giga-commie when I started off on streaming, right?
That's true.
I started learning, more about the world and how the world works, and about economics, and about philosophy, and about different political ideologies and organization. And I went from hating the fuck out of America and thinking that it would be pretty base of America balkanized to now I really fucking love the United States. I used to think that why don't we just get rid of the Constitution? But now I like the Constitution. I think that the protections that it gives us as citizens is really cool.
Are you pro Second Amendment, Sonzel?
I am pro Second Amendment. I've always been pro Second Amendment, though.
That's true. You have. Well, let me ask you this, right? Just out of curiosity, when you say that you're pro First Amendment, do you think that the federal government should be able to regulate tech companies and tell them you have to enforce the First Amendment because that's where the new town hall is?
The First Amendment is a protection against government compelled speech. I think that the case with the Florida and is it Texas as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Florida and Texas Supreme Court case right now is interesting. I don't think that it is a First Amendment violation for them to ban people, but I do think that the social media company stuff that's going on right now, I mean, fuck, I'm banned off of Twitter 3 times, perma-banned now. I'm banned off of Twitch, perma-banned, right? For extremely mild bullshit things, right? But
you pissed off the T's, right?
Don't piss off the T's.
Yeah, did you piss off the T's?
That's one group that I pissed off, all right?
Uh-huh.
The other group would be the communists, all right? Which is why I hate
But you really pissed off the T's.
I pissed off one specific subset.
One specialty.
Right?
Specialty.
Yeah, specialty. But
it doesn't seem like those T's like that freedom of speech very much.
No, they don't. Which is why I don't believe in communism or anything like that.
Oh well, the T's, the T's don't like your freedom of speech either.
Well, there's a lot of them that are communists.
Isn't there though? Isn't that weird? It's like I wonder where do you think they got all those ideas from? Do you think it was from school?
Actually, most of the people that I know that have transitioned fell into commie communities after they realized that they were trans. It's because those are the communities that were hyper accepting of them. So I don't think that the communism makes people gay. I think that the gay people are accepted by people who are communists because of a bunch of different reasons.
What are those reasons?
I mean, conservatives fucking hate gay people and trans people. So
well,
you got the liberals.
Hang on,
right?
Hate's a strong word.
I've heard the way you talk about them.
Well, hang on, can we use a different word like maybe loathe?
You're using,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Sonzel. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Using
but you know what I mean,
rhetoric.
right? There's more negative feeling towards trans and gay people on the right. Liberals are going to be a mixed bag, but communists, especially like the new wave communists that came after the 60s, were very accepting, right? And so I can see how that would be enticing to people who are, being shit on by people to the right of them.
So you're saying that communists and leftists use the mentally ill in order to propagate their propaganda? Is that what you're saying?
Listen,
Sonzel?
You don't want to hear my opinion on conservatives and mental illness, all right? Because you guys.
No, I do. I'd like to know how it could be.
Hey,
I'd like to know how it could be fucking possible that you
think. This is the last thing that we can talk about, okay? But like, you guys are like supporting a guy that has 90 criminal fucking indictments, and you guys still think that this is like the best person, most moral person that you guys could put up on the fucking Republican docket. All right.
So who cares how many criminal indictments he has?
For that. I think that you guys are retarded for that.
Why?
Because you guys had a pick of like fucking 2 dozen.
Sorry, I hit the button when you say retarded.
I was looking at everybody's mouth like, who the fuck is making that noise?
I was like, is that
Everyone's
me?
mouths were closed.
It was internal.
Jonzel, I feel like you don't. I feel like you're not going to be a Trump guy.
No, I'll never be a
Are
Trump
you
guy.
riding for Biden?
Values.
I'm hardcore riding for Biden.
Oh God,
you riding Biden, eh? Why? What do you love about him?
I think that the way that he was able to get through a bunch of bipartisan legislation over the past 4 years has been pretty cool. I think that most of that legislation was really good. I think that his ability to try to cross the aisle, at least most of the time, is a really good and needed thing in the country. I think the biggest thing that's holding us back is the fact that we're so divided, so it leads to a split Congress, a split Senate, and then hyper aggressive presidential campaigns that if you win them, then you're gonna, try and fuck over the other side as hard as you can, and if you lose, then you're gonna try and fuck them over in a different way. I think that that's the biggest thing holding America back right now. So I think that someone who can negotiate with people on the other side and isn't just like, hey, once I get in office, I'm going to fucking rape these motherfuckers until they just can't even fucking govern anymore. Like, I feel like that's where we need to go, in a much more chilled out environment so that we can actually get legislation passed. That's what needs to happen. I got like 5 minutes, by the way.
Do you support democracy?
Hang on, how much time you got?
Like 5 minutes.
Why?
Because I told you at the beginning of this, I have to go to do schoolwork. Because I want to get a full ass career.
Indoctrination.
It's indoctrination.
What are you learning?
I'm studying political science.
Do you have to work tomorrow?
I do have to work tomorrow.
Do you have to work? When's the last time you called in sick?
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, but if you called in sick and I gave you $200, could you stay for another 2 hours?
I'll double it.
Ooh, that's a good deal, Sonzel. And you're not going to get a good job with political science anyway, so you might as well take the money up front.
I've already got some things lined up. I'm gonna have to leave in I'm gonna have to leave in 5 minutes, man.
What about $300, Sonzel?
If I get $300 now, but then I lose my job, I lose however much the lifetime earnings that I would have.
It's not even on the internet that you said you'd call in sick. You're fine. There's no trace of it.
I mean, I'm not going to give you $300, but I was just curious what you would sell yourself for. That's all.
If you drop me $1,500, I'd quit that job right fucking now.
For $1,500?
Oh hell yeah!
That's not a very good job. If you're gonna quit it for $1,500,
no, it's not a good job. It's not a good job.
Why do you even care? Just call in sick.
Because I actually have fucking responsibilities, unlike most of the fucking losers that stream on this website. All right.
Well, that's fair. But here's the thing, Sonzel. If you call in sick, right, I will send you $200 right now.
I can't do it, man. I
That's
appreciate the
100,
gesture.
dude. That's, I mean, there's no way. There's no
I'm gonna
possible
make more
way.
than $200 at work tomorrow. Okay,
You can't. Then why would you quit that job for $1,500?
because I don't like it that much.
But that's, I mean, you're making damn near $1,500 a week, if 200 a day, right?
Just about.
The Sonzel math is not adding up in the Andrew.
I'm
But
trying
you know
to
what?
get.
It's your
I'm trying to
business.
get the fuck out of this.
This is how we're
I'm trying
going to
to get
use
the
these
fuck out of
last
the
5
call.
minutes.
All right.
Just like- all right, Sonzel. All right.
Hey, I really do appreciate you guys having me on, though. It's been a fun conversation. If you guys have this again, I'll try and make it and not have to leave an hour into it. But
All
yeah.
right.
Anyways, yeah, I'll catch you guys later.
Okay,
right.
cool. Thanks, Sonzel. I had a question. Given that we could basically select who we're importing into the country, I wonder if the right side of things will do a flip on the impulse reaction of like immigration bad, because it seems like if you can control immigration and select for immigration and then manage the fulfillment of, that means you have in contact with these people, wouldn't it make sense pragmatically that the right side would just go, you know what, we're going to play the immigration game, we're just going to do it better? Now, is that
I don't mind that
flawed
argument.
position, or is that a problem? Andrew, what's your take on that? Because, you know, it's the go-to is, oh, that damn immigration, and then you're going, yeah, but if we don't produce enough, but we want to overproduce, and we can import our paradigm to some extent, obviously not identical, but close enough to reproduce. Is there a problem with that?
I'm sorry. Ask the question again.
Can the right side exploit and harness immigration to their favor instead of having this impulsive reaction, immigration bad?
No, because what'll happen, and you're gonna see this in the next 10 years. You're actually already starting to see it. What'll happen is, as the hardliners on the southern border begin to push back against the immigrants coming up from south of the border, who most of them are Catholic, you'll start to see future Democrat organizations and future Democrat presidents actually enforcing Border Patrol policies once they start to recognize that there may be a demographic shift that moves towards religiosity. The second they see that, they'll start to try to import from other nations other than south of the border in order to bring in people who have a more, let's say, secular affiliation. So no, it's not good for us no matter what. Demographic shift is not good for us no matter what. It's better for us to try to do anything we can to enhance our domestic population. Democrats, as you might know, historically have shifted their policies in a heartbeat if it suits them. Most of these guys, many of the Democrats who still exist, voted against gay marriage. They voted against Jim Crow laws. They voted against all of these things. They didn't care because that was an opportunity for power. But you see in the year 2023, they've gone woke. They go towards the progressive side. Whatever the power dynamic is what they're going to go for. And you will see a trend where there's a possibility that immigrants coming in could shift the demographics such that religiosity turns the country around. They will begin to enforce immigration policies against those nations. You actually see this shift. I can give you an example of this in real time. Remember, post 9/11, there was a huge influx of people who came out in support of Muslim immigration. You can see that those hardliners, though, have begun to really push back against that in the Democrat side from Muslim nations, because they now are concerned about things like Sharia and the fact that the Muslim nations are sending in people who might be anti-Zionist and this type of thing. So the left will shift to whatever power dynamic is necessary. That's just what they do. So these were the pro-Muslims not very long ago. Now they're the anti-Muslims. As soon as they recognized that Muslims went, no, fuck you on the degeneracy, they started pushing back against that demographic coming in.
Yeah, I wonder if we can predict someone trying to advocate from that view, though. I wonder if we'll see that, and it'll have to be shut down using your similar argumentation. I wonder if that's would even come up, though. I bet it won't from the right side. Just any advocacy for immigration but through the context of it's going to help us if we import our ideology, so to speak.
There are advocacy groups, there are immigration advocacy groups out there, but they're framed as being basically white nationalist groups. Those are groups which advocate for like European immigration, Western European immigration, trump all other types. But they're essentially vilified inside of the media and inside of the online spaces, so they can't ever gain any traction. The problem is that kind of a side effect of the Western tolerance doctrine is that they will import immigrants who aren't very tolerant. One of the things so interesting about what's going on with the British invasion, which is basically a mass upheaval due to Muslim importation, is that surprisingly, what might save Europe is the Muslim importation. If you want to save Europe from degeneracy, continue to import the Muslim arm, right? But it's going to destroy the culture which is currently there, which might not have supported the degeneracy to begin with, but they've lost control, right? They've lost control, and their own demographic has embraced it. So, yeah, Muslims they'll come in and they'll correct it, but
so
diversity, the unfortunate side effect is you lose your culture in the interim.
Right. So diversity, pluralism, it's that slogan is our strength is one of the biggest lies. Wouldn't you say that? Like, this is never true for any culture. Like, you couldn't imagine saying that slogan in Japan. Like, diversity is our strength. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't. I spent a lot of time there last year in Japan, South Korea, and places like this, and they're extremely culturally homogenous. Like, if you go to Tokyo, the main spots are Shinjuku and Shibuya, and everybody is so Japanese. And there are these few immigrants of like big Nigerian guys in the middle of Tokyo, and they stick out like a sore thumb. It's so funny because they're all trying to basically sell drugs and get sort of sex tourists and scam them and rob them and everything. And yeah, they really stick out. But yeah, diversity is not the strength. But I do think that in terms of the right using immigration, the biggest problem is in terms of demographics, because a lot of people are actually worried that the white Christian culture of America is being destroyed, basically. And you look at Britain, and they're like the example right now of what not to do, because they've imported a bunch of people who not only don't necessarily align with their culture and their values, but hate them. And unfortunately, the people who are coming from the Middle East and Albania on a boat, who are coming to the UK, these aren't like the engineers and the doctors, and these aren't the architects and the electricians and the professionals. These are the guys who get no play in those countries, because there's also a big problem with I think it's polygamy, where you have the men have multiple wives. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
In the Middle Eastern countries, the top guys at the high end have lots of different wives, and then you get this big makeup of guys at the very bottom who get no play whatsoever. And these are the guys who are going and jumping on the boats, who have no sort of concept of how to interact with a woman. And then they'll get over to a place like Sweden or like the UK, and they'll see a woman with their legs out and they'll think she's a whore, And so this is the cultural clash that's happening at the moment there.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems to be there's a consequence of technology, transportation, the ability to just upend your family and go somewhere else. I don't think this has been a great thing for homogeny, cultural cohesion at all, even though it seems like, oh, I'm so glad of our advances. I can fly anywhere. But this is a problem, because you can just keep moving and chasing income anywhere, and the fabric of whatever culture you're in just starts to deteriorate. And that's not even including, immigration. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? You advocate for planting your feet in the ground, planting your seed in the woman, and maintaining something. And it really is an uphill battle. It's like, I understand why people get nihilistic when they hear you or Andrew or me or anyone else saying that there is this long-term game that we're committing to that might not even unfold in our own lifetime, which is really has a tension between that and immediacy. We're used to immediacy. And so it's a hard game. So I understand when people think and they go, what am I going to do? How do I even play this game? It is a long game. It's a generational game. But that's the only thing you can play. You know why? Because just like, Andrew said, the Muslims are playing that game too. and they can play it well. So diversity it's not great, constitutionalism if it's just liberty above all. I wanted to ask Sanzel,
and
about that, like, why Constitution good?
Hang on. I got plenty of commies. I'm sending out the invites to get a few more on the panel here.
I sent it to Doug too. He could save us.
But also, I don't think that this is necessarily good for those countries either. Because if you think about it, if you're Britain or if you're America, the problem is that you've got people coming in illegally, right? So if you've got people coming in illegally from the south of America, come from Mexico, Venezuela, all of these different countries, one of the remedies that you could say would be to help these people where they are and to make their countries better, which if you do believe that America is sort of the police of the world, the superpower of the world, has the ability to do that, then they have the ability. And also America, in Britain, for example, as well, they've got all these Africans coming from and up into Turkey and all these places and into Spain and coming through. But the problem is when you take away the best immigrants and when you use the strategy of, could we actually positively impact the country with immigration? Could we take the better people, the Catholics, the professionals? If you take them out of the country, it negatively affects their country. They lose their professionals. They lose their most talented people, and you see quite a lot of this with immigration as well. So, do you want to help these countries where they are?
Yeah,
is that a way
it's like
of reducing immigration as well?
Yeah, it's like expanded Operation Paperclip, but for other specialties. Exactly. That's kind of what immigration has been. It's like everyone's a free agent on a team, and you're like, well, globalism's true, therefore, I don't need a loyalty to a team, and that's kind of what diversity provides. Maybe a ruling class is like, oh, you're a free agent. You don't have to be a Christian traditionalist nationalist. You can just go anywhere you want, wear a different jersey. And I can see why at a certain age, at least in a naive space, you can think that's like a great, thing. Like, oh, wow, we're so advanced. Wow, what a shit show it's been as a result. It's just been every country slowly diluting its fundamental core as an identity. And then what? Who's going to fill the vacuum of what is it a human? Saying a global citizen is not an identity. It tells you nothing about culture, tells you nothing about values. So I predict a bunch of a little bit more of a backlash from a variety of cultures against this trajectory. And I don't know. I hope it doesn't get ugly, but who knows?
I think there'll also probably be a fair bit of people from places like Australia, America, UK moving to other countries as well. I'd say if there were stats about this in 50 years' time, I think that the outward migration from places like America will be much, much greater as globalization continues to grow. Because you've got countries in Asia that are becoming economic superpowers, places like Singapore. You see a lot of Westerners who want to move to countries like this. You've got more countries in Europe as well that are burgeoning, more opportunities. So as this continues to grow and as places like America become more of a shithole, and then you can go to a country like Georgia, for example, and you get taxed zero.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people who are taking these opportunities, and there are a lot of countries that are seeing what's happening in the Western countries. And these countries have more traditional values. They have lower taxes. If you're earning a Western wage in those countries, you can have a way better life. So I think we'll see more of that.
This is a good question. What is America's fundamental core? I mean, from my view, it's like what Sandel's now arriving at, which is I'm now rejecting, is like Constitution, America. And I'm like, well, that's not enough. This baseline Enlightenment thing of just liberty is not enough to maintain anything. Andrew, what would you say America's core is, being that we're infants?
Hang on. I'm fucking busy. I'm trying to make your show awesome over here. Give me
right.
I'm almost done, fucker.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get a lefty on to tell us. I won't ask you because you're not American. Actually, I would ask, where are you from again? Just to make sure I got the Australia. Does Australia have an identity, a problem, the same way America might?
I think that Australia has a very pronounced identity in terms of mateship and being a knockabout.
All right, Jance, hang on. I just want to let you know we're about to have a hell of a panel. So just like
go.
strap yourselves in.
Let's go.
You in the audience who might be getting a little bit bored due to Jimbob's droll.
Fuck
we're
off.
we're about to go into overdrive here and have some fun. So I just want to let all of you know that this is going to get wild here in just a second. So just hang tight while I do my thing. You guys, you know, back to your, you know,
back
regularly
to
scheduled stuff here.
So you're saying Australia has something, but you know, the cohesion, you would say it's not like substantial. It's just like, is it superficial? Because I just see America as like mostly, aside from buying into American exceptionalism, like
Gavin was just about to hop on, but he's hopping on a plane. Otherwise, we just have McGinnis on right now. But we've got some good ones coming here in just a second.
Nice. Thank you for the outreach, Andrew.
This is about to get really fun in just a minute. So yeah. Jimbob, real quick, one more time. Grab your phone and text me the link, please.
Sure. Go ahead. Tell the audience more about what you think Australia is as a core identity. I don't really believe you, but
well, some people don't actually believe that Australia exists at all. There is a conspiracy theory that Australia doesn't.
Andrew's one of those people. Yeah,
at all.
One of those people.
Wait, who says that? Who says that?
I can't confirm nor deny. But we have an identity, but unfortunately, Australia don't have much of a political identity, if you will, and things are very stale and boring. The good thing about America is that when you come over here, it's absolutely electric. People go to these Trump rallies and these CPAC. Like, you'd never go to something like that in Australia. It wouldn't occur to you. But people go to Trump rallies, and it's like a lifetime experience for them. And they treat debates and political debates like sport, and they care so much about their team and their city and their state. In Australia, people don't really give a fuck. And the problem is, not a problem, but the thing is that we're so comfortable over there. The 2008 GFC really didn't affect us that badly. The economy is always pretty good. The politicians change, and the prime minister in Australia will change, and you don't even know about it. Like, no one really gives a fuck. And in America, though, people care so much because you have that core identity, and because you've had the Civil War for your, to free the slaves, or for economic reasons, whatever it was.
I want to ask you, did you guys?
Okay, this is about to turn into something. You've got some, you got a bunch of fellas coming in.
All right.
And
here we go.
Now, Jake, I blame you for this, but me and Jimbob are going to need you to get our back for what's coming. Let's just put it that way. Yeah,
got your back.
Got our back. The Aussies have our. Is that the first time the Aussies have ever had our back?
No, we've always got your back. The hell, you go to war, we go to war.
Way back.
We died on the shores of Gallipoli for the First World War, and then
the fuck is Gallipoli?
For you guys,
what the hell is Gallipoli?
You guys got rid of. You
besmirched my country.
You guys got rid of the native.
Besmirched my country.
Yeah, you did.
I'm going to get the white glove across the face.
Yeah, you guys got rid of. You guys got rid of
Nam for you guys
too. Yeah,
no,
we got to Nam. You're not done. You're not done getting rid of the natives. You're just
I think
ongoing project.
There was a little bit of a confrontation. There was a little bit of beef back in the day, but I think they're all good
them
now.
Off. Yeah,
they go out bush. Have you ever heard about going out bush? What that means?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
We got Tom up in the house. Tom, introduce yourself to the audience, please.
How's it going, guys? My name's
How's
Tom.
it going?
Go by Tomfoolery Show. Do politics, drama, news.
Hi, Tom.
Debates. How's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the panel. Thanks for jumping on.
We got a couple more coming. Got a couple more coming.
All right, cool. And your general take, you're right leaning, right? Christian.
I'm more of like a liberal, kind of like a centrist liberal kind of guy.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We'll target you. Who else you got coming on here? This is going to be fun.
Just don't worry about it. You know what I mean?
Fun.
Just go with the flow as they pop in here.
we got to have Sanzel back on because that's he's a good piñata. He's like a piñata like that bites back, and he's like, you hit me, but he's a good one to have on.
I think that Sanzel has become more conservative than tomfoolery. I'm not going to lie.
I've moved the opposite direction. Yeah, when I first met Andrew,
yeah.
I was definitely still Christian and still.
Yeah, now you're shopping at Warby Parker and shit.
Well, and he used to have hair too. Like back in the day, like he used to have hair, and then once the hair went, the Christianity went with it. It's been a bad shit show for poor Tom.
Actually, where is it? Where is that toward, though? I mean, when you go away from conservatism, what is it you're actually going toward?
Into the abyss.
Liberty? Well, it's. I don't think that there's like a dichotomy in that way. It's more so that like once you don't really have faith anymore and you kind of just don't believe in the thing, it takes a while to kind of admit that to yourself, especially, 30 years into being a Christian. It's really hard to like reanalyze everything you've ever believed and all of your morals and, and your entire family's Christian, your dad's a pastor, like being able to admit this, not just to yourself, but to them as well. It's a bit of a process, but it's more about just losing faith and then trying to reanalyze the world through a new lens.
What if just that paradigm was wrong that you ran away from?
What paradigm?
The paradigm of the one you were raised in. Like you're saying the version you were raised in is wrong. What if that's true, but it doesn't logically follow that any account of Christianity is wrong? My view is you couldn't possibly argue liberty is a goal. If you got to liberty, it doesn't tell you where you ought to take it. It just gives you Burning Man, right? So do we want a Burning Man society, Tom? Even in your exit from theism, do you want a Burning Man society?
No, but we do have.
Why not? No, but why not?
Because I don't think that that's beneficial. I don't think that people want to live in that. That's why.
Okay, what if all of the leftists, like freedom-loving, dancing in the streets, sex on a train people, start sort of winning over the culture, which I'm seeing, like that these things become more normal, right? What if freedom of expression is the ultimate goal of liberalism, right? And people started adhering to it. How is it different than Burning Man?
It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I would fight against that. Why
though?
I think that most people would fight against that.
But why?
Because there are other negative consequences that come from those sorts of things. Like what? Having sex in the right places, like being overly stimulated by sex, or having I'm not thinking of the right word. Overexposure to sexual actions kind of take away the pleasure from sex being the special thing that's meant for you and somebody else in private.
I got you.
Also, it being exposed to children would be a bigger problem.
Okay, I understand, Tom. It sounds like you're borrowing a little bit from your remnants of the Christian ethical system, right? And trying to apply it to a secular view. But the thing is, if you like what you like, right? And people like what they like, right? And liberty is the ultimate goal of liking what you like, right? So how would you argue against some sort of tipping point where you're doing something too much? How would you yourself from your system go, you know what? I know you like that feeling, but you have to wean it back a little bit. How would you argue that from your ethical approach?
The same way we do currently. We say that we have freedom of speech, but we still put some limitations on what that means. You can't say, I want to kill this person, or you can't the example of yelling fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
We still try to put limitations on.
Yeah, but that harms that's a harm principle argument. And so I'm saying from your harm principle argument, because you're using an example that actually assumes harm might be possible, and that's why you're arguing. I'm saying if there was no harm from your view, you would have to say weekend orgies for married couples is fine so long as there's no harm or violation of rights, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, is that that view, right? From your view, you can have loads of degeneracy that's completely legal and consistent with a liberty-based, rights-based system. And I'm saying to you that from that view, you're eventually going to get public indecency, which we already have, and you, Tom, can't argue against it. Why? Because it doesn't directly harm people.
Well, it doesn't have to have a direct harm, but because I can make arguments on indirect harm. But yes, if you're saying, hey, if you take away all of the bad things from this thing, is it no longer bad? Yeah, no, it's no longer bad. If it doesn't have any problems with it, it's just ceased to become a problem.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So here we go. So sorry to be morbid, but it's a really good example, right? So if, just like the vegans, right? If you remove the assumed harm in the experience, in the subjective experience of the subject, whatever you do, like let's say, a dead person is a good example. If you do whatever you want to a dead person and they have no family, no repercussions, right? Indirectly to other people. Is there anything wrong with doing anything you want to a corpse?
If there's no indirect harm or direct harm, no, I would say no.
Okay. So you advocate in your system that if there was a group of people that paid money through a private corporation that found a bunch of John Does and Jane Does that didn't have family, you'd be okay with a system and a company that sold 5, 10, 30 minutes to people who had sex and did other things to dead corpses. That's the kind of society you'd prefer under your ethical system.
So currently, we also live by like the golden rule: do unto others that you want done unto you.
They're dead.
People don't want this done to them after they're dead. And so
no.
You don't They don't want it done to them after
No, you don't get to grant people preferences after they're dead.
Wait, so you're advocating for this, not me. I'm making an argument for why I wouldn't advocate for it, but you're making a rule for yourself, because this is a rule that I would advise.
Tom, you're presenting reasoning, posthumous reasoning. That means you're transposing wants and desires and the subjective experience of harm after someone's dead. Okay?
Correct.
So how does someone have a subjective experience of harm if they're dead, sir?
Well, they don't have a subjective experience of harm if they're in a coma either, but I would still live by this rule then as well.
So what's the harm in someone who's, whether they're in a coma or they're gone, what's the harm? You already conceded there's no harm from your harm principle. There's no harm for someone, starting a company and renting out time and space in a room, right, for people to have their way with dead people.
Yeah, I'm saying if nobody cared about this. I'm saying that if nobody cared and nobody had a problem with it, and then yes, I would not have a problem with it either. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's a culture that starts to percolate up where people start taking your view, and there is a society that has a bunch of companies that find homeless people who don't have families, and they put them in a system where you can rent out a room and diddle them after they're dead. You're saying there's nothing wrong about that from your moral view.
Yeah, because I believe that, like, even when I was a Christian, I believe that God had morals for reasoning. I believe that he understands human nature, and that God wanted us to act in accordance with our human nature. And so even in this case, you're bringing up an example that I think most people just wouldn't want to happen to them. And that's why we would live by the golden rule in this case, is that, like, because people don't want this to happen to them, we just live by the rule that we don't do this sort of thing. But if you're saying, hey, we're going to change human nature to where people would be okay with this sort of thing happening after they're dead, then yeah, I would be okay with it. But you're taking like something that I believe even God would say, yes, like humans don't want this sort of thing happening, so I would be against this, and I would say this is immoral because this is part of human nature.
Tom, what reasoning would you have that you didn't want someone doing this to you if you were dead, if you didn't have any family or there was no impact? What reason could you possibly provide to say, I wouldn't want this to happen to me? Why?
I don't know that I can explain my wants all through harm and things like that. Like sometimes I just want something and I can't explain exactly why. And I think in this case, lots of people wouldn't want people having sex with their bodies after they're dead, even though they can't give like a logical reasoning for it.
How about this? Let's say there's a person like you who comes to the conclusion that they don't mind this activity, posthumous activity, and in fact the posthumous activity is simply an extension of basically OnlyFans in real life. It's prostitution but with dead people.
I mean, I've already bit the bullet that yes, if nobody cared about this, I wouldn't care about it either. Okay,
great. So you're okay with a free market system that when family members die, as long as the family itself is okay and some extended family, that they can rent out their dead grandma to get fucked in a room for money.
Again, I don't
What?
think this is going to
Tom!
happen because I think this goes against human nature. But yes, I'm okay with it. Like in principle, yes. This is what I've already said.
Tom, what did
Now,
you
Tom,
do?
Tom, hang on. What do you mean human nature? You mean that the ontology of humans is that they don't do this type of thing? The nature of them, the being of them?
Yes,
Do
that
they,
there is
though?
something in us that makes us want certain types of things or not want certain types of things, that we all kind of have an agreement on what we would call harm, even though we can't always explain why something is harmful, because we have human subjectivity that makes us want and need things through human nature. Yes.
That sounds like mob rule, Tom.
In what?
Well, so this sounds like if you're trying to make a definition of what harm is, and you just say it's based basically around what the society considers to be harmful, doesn't that seem to you to be just kind of mob rule based morality?
In some way, obviously, I can disagree with people on what is or isn't moral. Like, my standards are going to be different from
Lonely
others.
corpses.
Just because they've come to a conclusion doesn't mean I agree with their conclusion.
But I got to ask you this on the harm principle. Let's assume for a second that grandma's buried in the backyard and nobody will ever know that you did this thing ever. And grandma, of course, has no soul because you're a secularist. And you go in the backyard and you dig up grandma and you have your way with grandma. What is the actual problem with that, Tom?
Well, one, it could cause psychological problems for the person.
Let's say it didn't.
But let's say it didn't.
They're already psychologically damaged enough that they're going to dig up grandma's corpse, Tom. I don't think you're going to do much more, right?
Yeah, generally, just because something doesn't actually have a direct harm doesn't mean that there's not a rule against it in the first place. So I can say, hey, if I shoot a gun at your head, just because I miss doesn't mean that it wasn't immoral in the first place.
Yeah, you're talking about rule utilitarianism. I get it.
Right.
Yeah. That's rule utilitarianism. But backing up at all,
against it one way or the other.
I mean, you realize that rule utilitarianism, though, is basically reduced to just utilitarianism, because let's assume for a second the society has no rule against it. Okay, now we are assuming the society has no rule against it because it can't definitively say how it's harmful. A person goes in the back, nobody ever knows it. They bang grandma's corpse. What's the actual problem here from the harm principle?
Well, I'm saying that I would have a rule against it. So you're asking me about my
why would you?
Subjective moral system. And
but why would you?
Because I do think that people wouldn't want this to happen to them after they're dead. Like, even though that there isn't a direct harm to the person
so what if
after
grandma left a note and said, you can hunt my dead body after I'm dead?
Signature grandma.
Then have at it.
Love grandma.
Then have at it. Then
again,
it's okay.
I would still have a rule against it, but I don't think I've already bitten the bullet numerous times already. That yes, if nobody cared about this and nobody said that this was a problem after they died and they didn't care if people had sex with them, then yeah, I wouldn't care either.
Then why do you? But here's my question, Tom.
Because we do care.
Yeah, here's my question though. I don't believe you. I think you would still care, even if nobody else had a problem with it.
I would, because that world will never exist.
So you're inconsistent. You're inconsistent, though.
No, I'm not inconsistent.
Yeah, of course you are.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that, yes, by the standards, by the hypothetical that you're making up, yes, I would be okay with it. But also, that world will never exist because that's outside of our human nature.
So the world doesn't exist where groups of people decide that they're
going to do horrific actions? Well, it's not outside of human nature. People do this.
Of course it is. Yeah, they do it, dude. There's literally a thing. There are people, there's a guy in Britain who's dead now, but he habitually did this, right? And from your view, he didn't cause harm. You know why? Because all these lonely people laying in the bed, Tom, didn't have any family to scream out.
Jimbob, do you think empathy is within human nature?
Empathy is just a signal. What does empathy tell you? Nothing.
So you don't think empathy is a part of human
empathy?
Well, I'll bite the bullet. Sure,
empathy
is part of human nature.
Signal.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, because there are some people who don't have empathy. So, just because there's some people who don't have this thing, that doesn't mean we wouldn't say that it's part
what is empathy?
That's true. It's like we would have to have some kind of standard that we would apply even for people who don't have empathy.
Yes, and that's
in your case, that standard would be harm.
Tom,
right?
Tom, what's empathy though? Isn't empathy the projected, assumed feeling someone else is experiencing? Yes or no?
Yes. Because
hold on. Okay, great.
So
do dead people experience anything?
No.
There you go. Empathy out the window.
Hold on. Jimbob, I've already answered this. You know I have like 10 times. So
Why did you bring up empathy?
Yeah,
Why
but
did
I
you
like
bring up
watching
empathy?
you bite
Because
the bullet
you
for
were
the
saying
10th
that
time,
just
Tom.
because
Every time you
some-
bite the bullet, it's funnier than the last time. So
because you said that I brought up an example of something, and you said, "Well, not all people do this. Some people will have sex with dead bodies." And I'm saying that doesn't mean that it's not against human nature. Just because some people don't have empathy doesn't mean that
it's
empathy
obvious,
isn't part of human nature.
Tom, like Andrew said, of course, obviously, it's in human nature that some people do this. If it wasn't in human nature to do this, then they couldn't do it. It would go against their nature.
Human nature that we don't want it done to us even after
What
we're
are
dead.
what are wants? Okay, what are wants?
Unless we scribble a note, right?
Yeah. Except we scribble a note, then we desire it.
Unless
right?
we scribble a note, then we desire it. Then there's no harm, right?
Just
Bang the
because
corpse all day.
Just because somebody doesn't have empathy doesn't mean that empathy stops being part of human nature.
Well, wait a second.
2 or 3 people
what is
not
unempathetic, Tom? What is unempathetic about grandma leaving a note saying you can bang her corpse and you bang it? I don't understand. Where's the lack of empathy?
That's not what I said. We're talking about human nature.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I said. So I want you to answer to what I said. Where's the lack of empathy there?
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, because there isn't any, right?
There's no lack of empathy there. Because you can't have empathy with a dead person.
I wasn't saying that.
Right? No, that's my point.
I'm not saying, Tom. I wasn't saying you were saying that. I'm saying to you, if it's true that empathy is being used here, some kind of model for why human beings should avoid certain behaviors, because empathy is one of the metrics that you're using to gauge harm. That's correct, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So then if grandma scribbles a note and says, bang the corpse all you want because grandma was half senile, or maybe she wasn't half senile, she just scribbled the note anyway, and you go out and you do that, where's the harm here, Tom? And why would that require a lack of empathy for you to make the determination that it was harmful in the first place?
I've already said there wouldn't be harm, that I would still have a rule against this in general anyways. But
based on what?
There wouldn't be harm on the individual.
Right.
If
there's no,
based on what, Jim? You already know based on what?
Actually, no, he doesn't. No. He doesn't. Here's why. Let me bridge the gap. Because you're using this as a metric for what harm is, and then you say that this is not harmful, but your metric for why you would have a rule would still have to be determined on harm. That's why rule utilitarianism always reduces to utilitarianism, because the metrics which you use to make the reduction to what is harmful is how you come up with the rule in the first place.
Right.
I didn't use harm for this example. I used the golden rule that do unto others as you want.
Which is a harm principle.
To some extent, yes. But it's like,
so what are you talking about?
This is when I'm giving an example where I'm saying I can't explain a harm in this case. I just know that human nature makes it to where we don't like this thing. So I can't explain an actual harm there outside of the fact that human nature just says we don't want people to do this. We already know this.
Tom, is there a food people generally don't like on net balance?
Maybe I don't. Not.
Is it evil because they generally don't like it?
Okra, right?
Okra, yeah, slimy as fuck.
Yeah,
right. Disgusting.
Like half the population probably doesn't like okra.
You're doing with another person, like in order, like you have to be engaging with another person for things to be moral.
Oh, it's relational. Oh, it's relational.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so what grounds your ethical principle? Now we know that it's relational. If you're also arguing something could be harmful and wrong if the person doesn't exist and just their corpse exists. So this is a contradiction. Premise 1, what defines something as immoral must be based on something relational. Premise 2, it's immoral to do X to the person who doesn't exist anymore. They're just a body. So what's the relational? What is this relational basis if the person's dead?
The rule against it. The rule, right? Remember, okay? I keep explaining this. We would have a rule against this because overall humans don't want this thing. We know that overall humans have this feeling. There might be 1 or 2 humans here and there who say, yes, I want you to have sex with me after I'm dead. But we already have a rule so that even though there's 1 or 2 who feel that way, it doesn't matter because generally, we know that most people don't want this.
Tom, are people generally overall greedy?
Sometimes, yes.
So greedy is moral?
No.
Why? Based on your system, it is. That's what follows. You just said,
what are you talking about?
Based on what most people want, X is immoral or immoral. I'm telling you, most people have the nature of greed. So you, in your system, have to abide by that and say, well, what is mostly in human nature to be greedy? It must be good, because that's the inverse of because that's the inverse of most people don't want X. It must apply to most people want X. How are you going to reconcile what people want versus what they don't want?
Lots of morals are set up to go against human nature, like the fact that we lie, or the fact that we want to steal, or the fact that we want to kill. Like, lots of morals are set up to stop us from following through in human nature. So it's not as simple as saying,
okay, got you.
But hold on, when I say that we make a rule just because we know it's part of human nature to not want to not want people to sleep with you after you're dead, that doesn't mean that all things now.
Tom, do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? This is the problem, Tom.
That you're not understanding. You're arguing
no, listen.
That I'm not saying.
Listen.
Ignoring most of my arguments.
I know that's your experience. Yes, I know that's your experience. No, this is your argument. That you say we know what's generally immoral because of what most people don't want, and we know what's moral based on what most people want.
That's not what I said.
Okay, so if you say most people don't want to be touched after they're dead, that from that view, you're saying it's immoral then, right? Regardless of harm being absent.
I'm saying that, yes, that is the reason that we would make the rule, is because we know most people don't want this thing, yes.
Okay, and then you're saying we make rules against our nature as well. So if our nature is to want to, use force to have sex with somebody, you're saying, well, even though that's human nature, we got to say, no, we should fight against that human nature. So both cases, you're appealing to human nature, and you're not giving us what's distinct categorically between the things we want and desire in our human nature towards something and the things we don't desire. All you're saying is human nature drives us to things that are bad and drives us to things that we like and prefer. That doesn't tell us, right? That's the thing you're actually using as the system of determining which one's good or bad.
It wasn't, but if you want to ask me the question of how you distinguish between those two, that wasn't what the conversation was about. But if you want to make the conversation about that, I can easily answer that, yes, like most morals are going to exist so that we can have a society and so that we can get along with one another. That's why morals are relational, is that you have to engage with another person. And so these are rules that we set together so that we can live amongst one another and engage with one another in the healthiest manner, so that, so that a society can exist. Outside of society existing, like, why is it the morals don't really
great
matter.
So why is it pragmatic or moral that a society exists?
It doesn't have to exist.
Okay. So it's not moral for a society to exist.
It's. I wouldn't say it's moral nor immoral. It's just a thing.
It's just amoral. Okay, so your whole basis for morality is that we ought to believe in something called morality for a pragmatic use toward existing, and yet the goal of existing is itself amoral.
The thing that morals exist for is amoral, yes. Do you think society existing is a moral thing?
Humans existing? Yeah.
No, society existing, not humans existing. We can exist by ourselves. We can exist in like very small tribes, but we don't have to exist in societies.
Well, humans are a precondition for societies. So
correct.
The question is really whether humans, is it moral for humans to exist? I would say yes, biblically, that we're here to procreate, multiply, so that we have a life that we can know our creator, right? So that's very basic view from my view. But from your view... But
you don't have to live in a society in order for you to know your creator. You don't have to live in a society.
Well, that's... In, like, I understand. No, I understand. But we're not really doing an internal of my view, because my view actually grounds why existing itself is not amoral. From your view, it's amoral.
Just now for why society would need to exist morally doesn't make sense, because you said it needs to exist in order for you to know God, and that's just not true. You can know God outside of a society.
I said humans need to exist.
Correct, and as a precursor.
I didn't say society,
but that doesn't mean that we have to live in a society to know God.
Tom, I didn't say. I said humans are a precondition for society to exist.
Correct.
Humans existing is a precondition for knowing God.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're saying you just didn't answer the questions. Okay, so I'll ask you again. Like, is society existing a moral thing? or is it just amoral?
Humans, no. The society could be fucking upside down pagan, burning babies alive, right?
Well, society is an entailment of humanity anyway.
Yeah, you can't.
Two
you can't
people,
escape
two
it.
people, two people is a society.
Right.
If it's not, then tell me what a society is.
Right.
I wouldn't say two people existing
then what is
together as a society.
Yeah,
Say that it's
become
a
a society?
large group of people working together.
What's a large
each
group?
person doing their
What
own
number?
part,
Yeah, what is a large group?
in like a very complicated
13?
way.
13.
Yeah, is it 10? Is it 9?
I would
Is it
say
8?
it's subjective, but it's well over 100.
It's
I would say.
13.
In the thousands.
Why?
It's
Based
like
on what? Based
They
on I
said
just
nothing.
made it up?
the fact that each person now has to do separate jobs. So like if you have a point where you're doing hunter and gathering.
If you have
sort of
4
stuff,
people,
then
each person would
maybe-
have to do separate jobs, Tom.
Done. Society.
Okay, sure, that's a mini society, I suppose. But when
Okay,
I
so
say
it's a
society,
society?
that's not what I'm talking about. So
Well, what are you talking about?
Well, as I said, it's like when large groups of people each have to do their own part in order for large things to exist. So like some people will make cars, some people will work on those
Okay,
cars.
I
Some
understand
people
what you're
manufacture
saying.
the
Some
parts
people
for
will
the
make
cars.
spears, some people will make spearheads. I got it, right? So why couldn't 2
Mhm.
people be a society?
It could be, but that's not what when I say society, that's not what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. I'm talking about like tons of things existing in large part. Yeah.
Right. So then we just have a
If you want to
definition.
call those things.
But I
Yes,
don't understand.
exactly.
I don't understand though the definition difference, because you would call what I call a society at 2 people the same as a society at 100 people. What would be the delineation?
Well, so sure, if we want to say like a tribe even would have to have a set of morals, and the morals would exist for that tribe to exist, and they would change the way that they interact.
Morals would have to
with one
exist with 2 people
just
existing.
for that tribe.
Same thing with
sure, like in that tribe, they would have to have a set of standards and rules so that they can interact with one another. Yes.
Okay. What about one person? If one person existed, wouldn't they still need to have some kind of set of morality?
Probably not. No, I would think that they would only have to have it if they're interacting with other people. Like
from your purview, morality really only exists as societies exist.
Correct. It only needs to exist because society exists. Yes.
Right. And that's it. So if there was just one human being left, everything he did would be moral.
Anything.
Well, morals just wouldn't exist, so it wouldn't be moral.
Well, then if morals don't exist, then you could never say anything he does is immoral, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So then if nothing he does is immoral, the inverse to that is there is no morality.
Well, I guess I am saying you couldn't say anything is right nor wrong because right and wrong wouldn't exist.
Could he go? Could he go and commit SA on a cow? Would that be moral? If he was the last human on Earth,
he'd say amoral.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in fact, is there anything he could do that you could think of that would be immoral at all?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay, so you're basically just saying there's no such thing as morality, because if morality existed, it would exist independent of whether there's one person or 2 people or 100 people. And so from your view, morality is just a fictional construct that's arbitrarily defined with language, given a society based on the acceptable norms, which would be informed by majority rule, and your entire ethical system.
It's not even informed by majority rule. It's just informed by one other person watching you do it.
Just the judgment of one viewer?
Just one person watching you do it. That's morality from Tom's perspective.
And it could be not
if
moral
I watch
next
you
day.
If I watch you essay a cow and I don't like it, now we have a moral issue. That's it. It's just an observational thing from Tom's perspective. So if it's one person, nothing can be moral or immoral. If there's one observer, then it becomes a moral or immoral issue. Why do you think we default to the Christian worldview? Because
I'm not
we always assume that there's an observer, right?
Yeah, I'm not bunk or synth, so I'm not dumb enough to say that like morals are objective if I'm not leaning on some sort of God as an axiom, right? Like that sounds insane to me. So yeah, so I would say it's subjective, and whoever the viewer is the person who's kind of coming to a conclusion on whether or not it's moral. But like I would also
neither viewer can actually be correct, right?
There's no correct one.
Yeah, so if there's no viewer that's correct, there is no such thing as morality.
Yeah, just saying subjective morality is just like saying it just doesn't exist. So I don't know why
saying something subjective doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So like a business is a social construct.
No, wait, you're right. You're correct. Hang on, I'm going to bite this bullet right away. You are correct, right? Saying that something, in this case, does not exist, or it's a social construction, fine, we'll go ahead and bite the bullet. But in this particular case, you're just talking about observational circumstances. So there can't actually be morality because there's only two people left. They both have a different moral system. Both their moral systems in your eyes are completely equal. They can't be anything else because it's just subjective, and it's basically just based on the observer.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be based on logic and reason, and that they should come to like conclusions based on.
So Tom, let me ask you the last question. Let's assume for a second that there is one conscious person. He's a man, right? And there is one baby who is born, and this baby, unfortunately, has severe brain damage. If this man goes over and he essays this baby every single day until it expires, I just want you to go ahead and say that there's nothing immoral about that.
There's nothing immoral about that.
Okay.
And when would it be? Okay, Tom. When would it be immoral? What would you have to insert? No pun intended. Where it become immoral?
Well, in our society, like people end up getting damaged through like trauma, and they end up with long.
How do you know? How do you know the person doing that to the baby isn't damaging themselves?
Damaging themselves? Oh, I don't know. Do you know that they're damaging?
It wouldn't matter. Okay. It wouldn't matter if they were. All that matters is no observer.
Right? Right? Yeah,
so it wouldn't matter if they were damaging themselves.
Your harm principle doesn't exist when you're the only one who's conscious and thinking, because from your view,
well,
even
you're
if you
saying
damage
the harm
yourself,
principle doesn't exist if the no harm exists. Yes, of course.
Well, no, if you can't, the question for us is, can you harm yourself?
Yeah, you can harm yourself.
Is it immoral to harm yourself?
Cigarettes.
Is it harmful? Is it immoral to harm yourself from your view if you're the only person? If the harm principle holds?
Generally, no. Probably not.
Why not?
I think it's fine for Andrew to smoke cigarettes. He can make the decision for himself.
Okay,
he's not engaging with anybody else when he does that.
Tom, but why would the harm principle, right? Why would it only apply to multiplicity of people and not to yourself if the description of harm is the same, whether it's to yourself or others?
Well, because if I'm defining morality based on like principles so that we can engage with other humans, then by definition, it's not a moral action until you're engaging with somebody else.
So when
now, let me ask you something else. Let's have the assumption that the last person on Earth believes that there is an observer. He just believes that there's an observer. Let's say there's not an observer, but he just believes that there is one, right? And so based on the fact that he believes that this observer exists, he acts in a fashion where he wouldn't, like, essay a baby. Would you say that this person is still living a better life than a person who would, let's say, essay the baby?
Possibly.
But I don't know what that means. Yes or no, or
I don't know, because you guys said it's possible that he's harming himself. But
I'm not saying anything about self-harm. Just forget whatever Jimbob asked.
You just asked.
I'm just asking if you believe that there was an imaginary observer.
Mm-hmm.
The observer didn't actually exist, but you thought an observer existed. Would it be preferable that, from your perspective, that a person believed that an observer did exist?
You're saying so it's like a person on an island by themselves.
Sure.
And we're asking
last person on Earth
that they think.
Last person on Earth, Tom doesn't even exist.
No,
but from Tom's preference, right this but from Tom's preference, right this second, for what is moral and immoral. If the thought that an invisible observer existed, and this guy would act in a much better way, at least from your preference right this second, if one did, would that be preferable to you that he did?
No, I don't know. I don't know what would the benefit of that be. You're saying, hey, like this guy should believe in something that's not real. Why would I want him to do that?
Well, I don't know. It seems like if it were true that he thought an invisible observer existed, and so therefore he would not go and essay an unconscious baby, I would think that from your preference right this second, that would be better, right?
Well, from my preference right this second, yes.
This is what the entailment is, from your preference right this second. So if he believes,
but that's because I live in a society where that is wrong.
Yes, I understand, and that's why I'm only asking you about you now. Would
yes,
it be
me
better
right now,
for
I
you
think
now?
that essaying babies is bad. Yes.
Right. So if there was an invisible observer, which a person believed in, he was the last man on earth, it would be preferable that he believed in that invisible observer in order to follow your preferences right now, correct?
In order to follow my preferences right now, yes, that would be better.
So the most moral way that he could act would be if he believed in an invisible observer, right?
You mean God?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
so
saying.
your own system advocates for a belief in God, and you're acting against it.
But
no, you just literally conceded that even assuming an observer like God is more preferable even from your system, and yet here you are rejecting it and defending fucking grandmas.
No, when you said more preferable from my system right now. So he's saying, hey, currently you have a moral set right now that you think people should act by. And would you want this other random person who has no reason to engage in this moral system whatsoever?
That's correct.
Would you want them to engage in this moral system? And I said,
yes.
no. And then he says, well, but from your standards that you're holding in this society.
Yep.
What would you want him to do? Okay, sure,
right.
I would want him to do that, but he's not in this society.
So then that would mean that so what's the entailment of that? The entailment of that, the entailment of that is that Tom's preferences are that you believe in God, even if you're the last man on earth, to act in the most moral way that Tom would want. That's the entailment.
Can you explain the logic there? I'm saying that I don't actually think that he should engage in my moral system that I currently have. You're making up a weird hypothetical where I want him to do.
Well, then why would you? Then why would you care? Well, wait a second. That's really weird, because if that were true, then why is it that you would state that you would prefer that he believed in this invisible being so that he acted more in line with your moral system right now?
Because in your hypothetical, I want him to do that. But in reality, I don't.
Well, then I don't understand. What's the distinction here?
What?
The distinction is that in reality, I do not care if this person in a completely different society engages in my moral system right now. Whereas in your hypothetical, that is part of the hypothetical. So it doesn't actually engage in my real wants.
You could have just say no. No, that doesn't make any sense. You could have just said no. You could have just said, no, I don't care if he believes in this system or doesn't believe in this system based on even my preferences right now.
That is what I
you
said.
Could,
and
no, you could just say
hypothetical to where I did care.
No, hang on. I'll walk you.
Where you said I want.
Let's see if this is true. Let's see if this is true.
Walk it through. Premise.
All I'm asking you is this: should people, do you think, uphold your standard of morality even if you don't exist?
It depends.
Well, does it depend or does it not depend?
I don't think I can answer the question based on the limited amount of information.
Right. Well, that's why I tested your logic. And when I tested your logic to determine whether you would prefer that people followed your moral system, even if you did not exist, based on a silent observer, in this case, we'll say the belief in God, you said it was preferable to you. So that's why the hypothetical was designed.
Necessarily.
Hang on,
hold on.
I'm almost done. That's why the hypothetical was there, to test your logic. So the question then becomes, if I'm wrong and this was a flawed test, then all you have to do is say, no, if I don't exist, people shouldn't follow my morals.
Okay. So if I said, hey, Andrew, God doesn't exist in this hypothetical. Mm-hmm. He's not real, right?
Yep.
But you currently here say that God does exist. Now, in this hypothetical, in order for this guy to abide by Christian standards, would you want him to believe that God exists?
Yes.
Okay. Now, take that away. This guy exists. God doesn't exist. And it's not going to be beneficial to him whatsoever to believe in God. Do you still want him to believe in God?
Yeah. So you're asking about two separate. Hang on. You're asking about two hang on, stop. I'm not asking about two separate hypotheticals. You're actually asking about two separate entailments. So to the first, when I say yes, the second you introduce God does not exist as a surety, I have introduced no such contamination to your hypothetical. I have actually said the opposite. No, I said the opposite. Let's assume in both God don't exist. Assume in both, but if a silent observer, if you just had a belief in a silent observer, in this particular case, they'd follow your moral system, would you ask that they do so? And your answer is Yes, but then when I ask if Tom doesn't exist, should people follow your moral system? You don't know. That does seem like it's inconsistent, whereas mine is consistent.
It's actually worse. Hold on. Let me just say this. It's actually worse than that. Hold on, Tom. It's worse than that. If Andrew asked you, should people follow your moral principles if you're not here? You said, no, I don't know how to possibly answer that. This is inconsistent with most people wouldn't want you to do X to them after they're dead. These are inconsistent. You can't actually take one premise and say, well, I don't actually know how to even answer whether someone should follow. Hold on. Premise one, I don't even know if someone should follow my moral principles after I'm dead.
Never existing versus existing and then dying. These are
if you just don't exist. If you just don't exist.
Yes,
what's
that's
the difference?
Different than existing and then dying. Those are totally different.
Okay, you don't exist. If you never existed and you don't exist, what's the delineation?
The one has a body that you can actually engage with. The other one doesn't.
You mean have sex with for money?
Well, he's saying the void distinction is the same.
Matter. But
Tom, you believe when you die, it's just like before you were born.
The void's the void.
In his hypothetical, he necessitates that I have to want that person in them to believe in the person.
No necessitation.
Yes, it was.
There was no entailment.
By my standard that I currently have here.
Yes.
Would I want them to do this? If you ask me in general, would I want them to abide by my morals? No, I don't. But then you say I have to want them to abide by my morals in this other
I didn't say
system. That. Okay, then I misunderstood the hypotheticals.
Say it again, Andrew.
Premise for clarification.
Premise by premise. Watch. Andrew. Premise by premise. Do it again, just one more time.
Yeah, so we'll just test this again. You can stop me at any point if you need me to clarify. Okay. All I'm asking is this: assume for a second that, because you believe that morality is based on the observation, the observer, the second observer. This is what creates morality or does not create morality. We have established this by the
morality when you're engaging with another person. That's when it becomes
so that would be the observer,
right?
Well, that would be the observer, right? We'll just say the observer for the state of this. Assume that you had an imaginary friend who you thought was an observer, even if they didn't exist. But the entailment of that imaginary friend existing is that they would follow Tom's moral system if this person believed it. Tom no longer exists. Would that still be preferable to you that they believed that?
And I said that I don't actually want them to follow Tom's moral system because
that's not what you said. Actually,
society. It is.
That's what you've said now.
No, that is what I said. We can go back and watch that.
No, you didn't. You said you don't know.
Hold on. And then he said, well, no, by your moral system that you have here right now.
Yeah, that's what I just said again. I literally just said it again.
Okay, so so that necessitates that I have to want the observer. It does. But if you're saying, do you in general
it does not
want
entail that you have to
abide by your morality?
Why is that an entailment?
Whether there's an observer or not an observer,
I don't understand why that would be
engage in my morals.
Tom, how's it an entailment?
I don't understand how that's an entailment.
Because by the morals that I currently have here in a completely different world, in a completely different society, yes, that would be the case. But in this other world, they're not in my society. They don't have my morals. They don't have any of these things, and there's no reason for them to have them.
Well, then there's no entailment.
Say, by my system here, yes, now I have to want them to do this. Yes, by my system.
You don't.
Here,
why?
But that's the
hang on. That's the flaw, is when you claim, by my system here, they have to want to do X. They don't.
Yeah,
there's no entailment there.
It's not an entailment.
Okay,
it's a preference. It's a preference.
Okay, yes, that you're asking me about a preference, and I'm saying that
I am. That's
in
right.
In the hypothetical, by my system, yes, my system would entail that they have to abide by this. But if you ask me again, in general, should they abide by my moral system? No, they shouldn't. Whether there's an observer or not an observer, it doesn't matter.
Then I don't understand why the entailment wouldn't just be no.
Okay, I don't know that I can explain it any better than I already have the last 10 times.
Neither do I.
You just say no. You just say no. There's no entailment.
I said no the first time, and then you changed the hypothetical. You could go back and watch it. You changed it to where I have to do it by my moral system that I currently have here, but there's no reason to do that.
No, I'm not even disagreeing.
There's no reason.
Tom, I'm not even disagreeing that I said the hypothetical based on your moral system here. Should they? Right? You could still have said no. There was no entailment that said you must say that they should, and that's where the conflict came in.
My moral system
but your moral system doesn't.
It's just arbitrary. The whole thing is
saying
just,
That's
that
the
it's
thing, right? Is that your moral system actually doesn't say that they
I
need
think
to.
yours is arbitrary.
The testing
as
of the
well, so it doesn't
logic
mean
was to
anything.
kind of show that even though your moral system doesn't actually have an entailment that they should, you would still have that preference anyway. That was the point.
Yes, but I'm saying that outside of that, I don't have that preference. I don't care if they engage in my moral system whatsoever. Like I had already answered that.
Yeah, well, then I don't understand why the entailment, even if there was an invisible observer, wouldn't just be no.
It would be until you say,
well,
by
then,
my moral
that's
system
my
here,
point.
If I'm abiding, if you're asking me through my moral system right now, then yes, I would have to say yes. But in general, no, that doesn't make sense.
That's
There's no
the problem,
reason for
right?
me to
Is
engage
that
in my
no,
moral
you
system.
don't have to say yes.
Okay, I guess
That's
you
where
just
we have
don't
the
understand
disconnect.
moral
Is I
system
don't
yet.
understand why the entailment of I have to say yes exists. No, you don't have to say yes.
Yeah,
Why would you have to say yes?
You've bitten every other bullet. That's not even the worst bullet you would bite. Actually, you've bitten
not
way
even
worse
a bullet.
bullets.
It's a hypothetical where I only have one answer, so it doesn't it doesn't.
Tom,
no, you have two answers.
I don't.
Yes or no.
40 answers. Right?
Yes or
You're
no.
making it by my current moral system, so you already know that by my moral system, I would have to say yes. You already know this.
Yeah, but I don't believe that by the entailment of your moral system, you have to say yes. That's the point.
Okay, well, I do.
Tom,
why? Why do you have to say yes?
Because by my moral system, yes, I want other people to engage in my moral system. But if in this other imaginary world, I don't actually want them to engage in my moral system because they're in a different world.
But that wasn't an entailment of the hypothetical, was that they have to do anything.
You just want them to.
You're right.
Yes,
that was the point of the preference, right?
Yeah, and why wouldn't you just want them to engage in their own moral system? I don't understand why you would transpose
That's what
yours.
I've said like 10 times.
Right, but that's the point, is that you don't have to say that, right? That's the whole point. You don't have to say that. You just be like, I don't want them to. I don't care, right? And that's it.
You don't care. You don't care if they do. You don't care if they engage in your moral system.
You just never had to say no. That's all.
Yeah, you just
I know
don't care.
we're arguing like a small semantic point, but I think it is an important distinction. That's all.
Also, Tom, if God does exist and you're wrong about your new path of the destructive nihilistic secularist, would God necessarily be the observer that would be required in your own system to denote or to basically make real moral facts?
You're saying if a God exists, would he be the one who decides what is or isn't moral? Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, well, he would be the observer in your system. That like Andrew pointed out, like
if
you
there
guys
was an observer, about observers, but if the observer isn't affected by your decisions whatsoever, then it's still not a moral decision. Like
so if God,
some sort of direct or
gotcha. Okay. So from your view, if God existed, let's say you just presuppose God existed, right? We just rewind a couple months before whatever you did. You say God exists, right? And he's the observer from your system. That whatever you did would only be immoral if God was the only observer, right, in your life. An act would only be immoral if it caused God harm.
Wait, that was I'm lost. What is the question?
Now the question is, you're based in the harm principle. We're rewinding when you believed in God. If God was the observer, you're saying an action that would only be immoral if it actually caused harm to the other observer, in this case, God.
And your question is, would that be immoral to cause God harm?
Well, I'm saying in your system, it could only be immoral if it caused harm to the other person or, personhood being who's observing. In this case, it would only be God. If only you and God existed, right? Mm-hmm. You're saying from your system, an action.
All right. Enough. Here, let's make this easy. Tom, get the fuck out of here. Me and Jimbob have another panel that we're going to jump on. That's Blood Sports. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Tom.
I hope, by the way, that you had fun and that you'll come back in the future. I
appreciate y'all having me on.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you.